welcome to Maverick Mindcast. My guest today is Joel Rafidi. He's a writer, he's a coach, and he's a truth seeker. He has an amazing podcast called Here for the Truth, and he also runs a program called Rise Above the Herd. It's an 8-week online program to create empowerment for fellow truth seekers. Joel, thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Corinne.
Oh, it's such an honor. Honestly, because I was telling him before we started recording that I'm actually kind of a fan because, Joel came up on my feed and I just, everything you were saying just resonated so much with me. They're your posts. They're very simple. They're to the point, but they really trigger a lot of self-reflection, which I love. Like, you can say a lot with a little. And I definitely feel like you're so gifted in that sense. And I just want to learn more about you. So I'd love to learn more about kind of your awakening, when it happened, what caused you to want to espouse these kinds of truths and inspire other people to also become truth seekers.
Yeah. The truth, it's an incredibly deconstructive process. I think often in life, we think there's a linear path or a straight road to discovering what's real and what's true. But it's simply not as well. For the most part, we're constantly banging up against walls, and it's more of a discovering what we don't want or what doesn't work, in order to begin to refine the process of what is truth, so to speak. I mean, that's just been my life journey. Growing up, I guess I was always a bit rebellious. I never really fit in with the status quo. I was in trouble a lot with my parents. But I just knew what I wanted. There was something within me that I didn't want to relinquish. After high school, I dropped out of uni 3 different times, despite my parents continually wanting me to go and be educated on a tertiary level. But I just had this inner dream. I wanted to live life on my terms. And I feel like for my entire life, the schooling system, society, religion, all the rest of it has kind of tried to drive that out of me to an extent. And I'm someone that I guess sticks to my guns a lot. And I mean, I haven't always been right, hasn't always been pretty, but I haven't really let go of what it is that I ever wanted. And so there's a few major milestones, I guess, in my awakening process, so to speak, that I can talk about. The first one was my first real major shift in consciousness happened in 2015. Growing up, my major dream, my major passion was to be a hip hop artist. First and foremost, my career was to be a rapper, so to speak. I wrote hundreds of songs. I released my first album in 2014. I got onto every major radio station in Australia. I was even on the TV show as well. Things were looking good. I was on an upward trajectory. And then in 2015, things kind of fizzled out with that album. Things didn't really come about in the way that I might have expected them to. And as well as that, I had my first major breakup with my first girlfriend. And so I had what some people would call a dark night of the soul, so to speak. And I began to question a lot of things. I remember one particular night, I was just in complete anguish, didn't know who I was, didn't know what I wanted, didn't know what the purpose of life was. All these questions came to me. And a few days after that, I was introduced to a book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It's quite a popular book. Many people might have heard of it. And I read this book, and essentially something shifted for me, right? Now, I don't fully recommend this book, but I think it was a necessary detour on my journey, as I think all things are absolutely necessary. But basically, I entered a state where I was almost completely blissed out. You drop the past, you drop the future, you accept everything, you resist nothing. I found so much joy in being alive. I found so much joy in just the most simple, mundane tasks like emptying a dishwasher or taking a bin out. All of a sudden, all these anxieties and things that just seemed to have dissipated, because now I didn't have to think about anything. All I had to do was be present and be here now, so to speak. And it was great. It was fun for a period of time. It was around then also where I first really started questioning, I guess, the government, so to speak. My initial forte into that was simply fluoride. Like, why the hell are they putting fluoride in the water? This is a known neurotoxin. Why are we being fed a known neurotoxin? Why are these people trying to harm us? And from then I was introduced to the Truth About Vaccine series. Back then trying to talk about vaccines was the most taboo subject that anyone could possibly talk about. So much different now. Anyway, so life continued. I got married. We had our first daughter, Valley. And then, things stopped making sense. This whole idea that I could just live my life and forget about the past and the future and think about nothing and just be here now. It didn't work for me any longer. A dissonance started to be created between, I guess, who I was projecting myself to be and how I really felt internally. Because ultimately, I think what books such as that and other books within the quote unquote New Age movement, which we can call it, do is lead you down a path of spiritual bypassing. And a spiritual bypassing is really bypassing our shadow, bypassing our inauthenticities, bypassing all the things that we haven't really dealt with in our lives. And I think this is kind of built into society, so to speak, in a way. We live our first 30 years, a full life of hedonism, going out, doing all the things, thinking we can get away with everything, living life without integrity, trialing everything. Sure, it's necessary, I get it. But when do we actually deal with that past? When do we deal with that history? And so what happened for me was my shadow essentially came knocking on my door in a pretty big and profound way. And it was like, Joel, there's a lot that you're hiding under the rug. Basically, you need to start reconciling. Or you need to start reconciling your reality. You need to start coming to a place of homeostasis. You need to start really doing the inner work and become more authentic. And so I went through a period of purgation where essentially, I had lots of very, very difficult conversations. I went through a process of, lots of memories and even some past life things coming up, some things that, I had to deal with. And it was a dark period. It was a very, very difficult period. It's not easy by any means, but I mean, the truth is not fun. The truth is not all love and light by any means. I often say that the truth is a killer. The truth holds, no prisoners whatsoever. But it's absolutely necessary for us to do that and for us to really reflect on, I guess, the lies, the inauthenticity, the deceit, the harm that, we've unconsciously caused within our lives. And so for us to live a life of true integrity, for us to create something really profound, it's necessary to do that work. And so then I guess 2020 came, and we all know, obviously, the scamdemic that hit.
2020? Just kidding.
Yeah.
What happened?
Nothing happened, right? Well, to me, how I had that personal dark night of the soul experience, I think that, on some level, the collective was forced to face its own shadows. All these lies came up to the surface to be exposed, and you either chose authenticity or you said, nah, this is too difficult. I'm just going to go along to get along, and I'm going to completely compromise myself because facing the truth about reality is too difficult. And what happens to the individual, I think, is reflected in what happens on some kind of macrocosmic level as well, because the lies that were being exposed externally, I feel like individuals within their lives and within their relationships had to face and deal with their own shit as well in their own relationships, things that they would have never had to talk about or discuss. And so to me, a window of opportunity opened for people to really stake their flag in the ground and choose them to live a life of authenticity. We all lost friends. We all had damaged relationships because of this massive polarization, which occurred. But for me, there was absolutely no turning back whatsoever. At that point in time, I was working in a family business in the construction industry. I was driving a forklift. I was making concrete. I was doing all these things. And I had a fallout with my family over some of these matters. And essentially, I was forced out of this business. And I had to look at my life and be like, okay, what am I going to do now? Basically. And I decided that I'm not going to do anything that I don't want to do anymore. I'm not going to live a life that isn't really reflective of who I am or that isn't in alignment with who I am. So all this knowledge that I gathered over the previous 5-6 years, I was like, what can I do with this? So I started speaking my truth online in a very profound way. I didn't care what friends I'd lost. At the end of the day, you can either accept me for what I value and for the truth that I'm willing to speak, or you're not, because ultimately animals in the wild, they call out for two reasons. Okay. One is to fend off predators, but two is to actually call in their tribe. So to alert their tribe of where they are. And it's been the most miraculous last 2 years. It honestly has. I'm in a position now that I absolutely never thought that I would be in my entire life. I met my co-host Erasmus in 2020 by watching my favorite podcast, Unslaved, hosted by Michael Dossarian and David Whitehead. He was a guest on that show. Erasmus did a talk on somatic intelligence. I just reached out, so that really resonated. And then 2 weeks later, I think we jumped on a call. We recorded episode 1 of Here for the Truth, just talking about our authentic journeys and our authentic paths. And then 75 episodes later, we interviewed David Icke. We have a group coaching program. And every single day I wake up and there's no dissonance between who I am and what I do. You know, I don't have to pretend who I am for absolutely anybody. There's no part of my reality that I have to fake. And it's a continual process, but more and more I'm realizing that it's absolutely an individual process. Each person has to do the necessary work. We can't be out there, you know what I mean? Everything is a conspiracy. Everyone's controlled opposition. The world is hopeless. You know, everything's going to hell, so to speak. It's not the case whatsoever. It's up to you to curate your life and to build the self-esteem and build your own capacities and competence to create a life of integrity where we're no longer reliant on these systems of domination and control, which ultimately they want us dead physically and spiritually. But there's so many people now saying, not for me, I'm done. I'm absolutely checking out of that reality. And I don't care what the cost is. I'm going to build life according to my integrity based upon my authenticity. And I don't know if that answers your question. But yeah.
I got more than I bargained for, which is a good thing. I was like, wow, honestly, you definitely have a gift, because I don't know, when you speak, I'm just like, wow, you make a lot of profound points. You reminded me in one of my previous jobs on a chat app called Slack. One of the engineers, I remember when you were talking about truth and it not being, pretty or fun.
Yeah.
He had like, you could put a little, whatever status thing. And his status was comfort wants you dead.
Yeah.
I was like, okay. But I don't know why, when you were talking about truth and going through that process and kind of literally auditing your life spiritually and, emotionally and everything else, I think that's actually the worst place to be. Like, we look at seeking out our truth as being super uncomfortable and painful, but I think it's actually more painful to stay in a stasis of comfort, where you're just kind of, you don't feel hot, you don't feel cold, you just sit like this and do nothing, when you stand still. But I think people have a different ideology in their mind. They think if I just stand still, everything will be okay.
Yeah, you become stagnant, you become completely disarmed, and that's exactly ultimately what they want. Sorry to say, they want you comfortable. They want you completely over medicated, overfed, over caffeinated. They want you completely content to not question anything whatsoever, to not use your intuition, to not think that I actually have innate gifts and potential which I can tap into and create real value for myself that isn't dependent on anyone or any system telling me what my worth is. But if you're comfortable, you're not going to do the work to figure that out. So they want you sedated, basically.
Yeah, it's like a false feeling of good feeling. I really feel that a lot of people haven't caught on to that yet, that, they still think, well, I'm comfortable, so, I'm fine. But yet we have more suicides than ever. We have more people dependent on prescription drugs and mood altering drugs and everything else. And we see this comfort manifesting itself in all these super unhealthy, I don't know my gender, and I don't know that, you can just look out into the world and see that this comfort is definitely doing a lot more damage than it is doing good. I would love to talk about your course. And also, I know you have an ebook, 55 Signs of Low Self-Esteem for Truth Seekers. Yeah. What inspired you to write that, and what's it all about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for asking. To me, self-esteem is the most important and most ignored psychological issue. And to me, it's actually the roots of most of the symptoms that people tend to be struggling with. Most of the mediocrity and the stagnancy that what we see is, in my opinion, due to self-esteem, which is an incredibly misconstrued idea. Essentially, self-esteem is the relationship that you have with yourself. It's the reputation that you acquire with yourself. And the strength and the quality of that reputation is going to determine the quality of every single choice that you make in your life. And sorry to say, but most people are in a completely antagonistic relationship with themselves, because they go against their own nature. They don't live as consciously or as responsibly or with as much acceptance as they really should be, if their goal is actually to rise above the herd and to live a life of integrity and to create value and to actually make money and be successful spiritually and materially, and give yourself the freedom, the options, and the choices to do things that are actually reflective of your inner reality. And so when we talk about, this comfort that society's been lulled into, at the end of the day, it's because people don't want to face themselves. They don't want to do the work to become friends to themselves, to actually truly like themselves. Because we're told that if you like yourself, if you love yourself, if you make decisions for yourself, oh, you're selfish, oh, you're evil, oh, you're so self-interested, etc., etc., etc. This is all part of the guilt programming which is built into our society as well. I mean, we can talk about religion, we can talk about original sin. Oh, I'm guilty simply for the fact that I live. You're alive, so you're a born sinner, you're born guilty. Hey, but where's the proof of that? Who told them, well, why am I guilty? What have I done? What, simply for the fact that I live? Are you serious? But we don't question these things. Most people just assume. And so then they live their life trying to atone for this guilt, which they can't even prove on any level whatsoever. And what happens when you accept guilt, which you can't prove? What are you doing to your thinking? You become unreasonable, because you therefore, from that moment on, you've abandoned reason. So people really aren't thinking correctly about these things either. And, I think quality thinking is definitely a side effect of healthy self-esteem as well. So yeah, for anyone that wants to grab that book, it's at growyourselfesteem.com, and we've listed 55 signs of low self-esteem for truth seekers, because particularly even with the quote unquote truth communities and alternative communities, low self-esteem is absolutely rampant. We give so much power away to these quote unquote oppressors and controllers. And like I said before, we think there's nothing that can be done. We think everyone's controlled opposition. Everything's a psyop. We think anyone that's successful has got there via corruption. It's simply not the case. There's a real reality.
I'm like,
that goes,
yeah, guilty.
me too, all of us, But to me, like I said, there's a window of opportunity open now for us to do the real work. And my intention is to try give power back into the hands of the people that are actually wanting to choose integrity, that are wanting to choose truth, that are wanting to choose, like I said, integrity over illusion, over ignorance. And so, I think self-esteem is an unavoidable topic on that path.
Yeah, it's funny when you said that, because I do tend to, it's hard. And I think when I interviewed Richard Willett, I asked him I said, do you think sometimes people get turned off by conspiracy research? And I don't like to say theorists, because I don't like that CIA stuff. But because it's like, once you go down the rabbit hole, it could drive you mad if you let it. It just lets you question this. And then you question everything, to the point where what is reality? So I just read a great book by Robert Kiyosaki called The Capitalist Manifesto. And he has this saying, and he shows the illustration where never choose one side of the coin. The best place to be is on the edge, because you can see both sides. You're not blinded on one. And I think that's really important for if you choose to go down that path of opening that can of worm of conspiracies and questioning reality, to keep your sanity. I think you really do have to sit on that edge. You can't pick one side absolutely, because then you'll just drive yourself mad. It's just going into another ideology, like pseudo religion, so to speak.
That's right. And to me, that metaphor is just saying you need to still be rational. At the end of the day, you need to maintain your reason, your rationality, because people go down this path, and then they, like you said, they go down the rabbit hole, and then all of a sudden, anyone that's questioning anything has the absolute truth about everything. Like we begin to idolize these people that are speaking out, and pointing out all the psyops, etc. But we're just replacing saviors for saviors. We're just picking another guru. We're just, we want to cling to someone who has the truth. But the truth is, there's not one individual who has the absolute truth. You have to discern that for yourself. And unless you've gone through the path of developing discernment and you deciding what's true for yourself, and your mind being the sole arbiter of what's right and what's true, and you being okay with that being the fact without having to outsource that onto anyone, then it's still going to be a slippery slope. So we have to begin to use our eyes, our ears, our mind again, truly for ourselves, truly to be like, no, I haven't fully understood that yet, so I'm not going to accept that. No, I fully haven't experienced that yet, so I'm not just going to accept that at face value because you said it is. And this is how we build the muscle of discernment. And to me, my mind, this ability of discernment, it's my machete. It's how I carve out reality. It's how I determine what's bullshit from what's real. It's how I know what I value. It's how I know what I want to achieve. And that's how I know that, this is where I am. This is where I want to go. This is the step that I need to take next, so to speak. So it's something that we really need to reclaim for sure.
Absolutely. I wasn't expecting to ask you this question, but I'm curious to get your perspective on this.
Please.
I'm not sure in Australia how it is, but here there's definitely an attack on masculinity. We call it toxic masculinity. And so many men, I think, lack that kind of conviction. They just kind of like, do you see that? Or like, are there a lot of men in your course rise above the herd? Or like, how do you see that? I don't know. I know I'm asking this. It's not a great way of phrasing the question, but it's just refreshing to hear your perspective, because you're not afraid to embrace your truth, and you're not afraid to be, which I think is more identified with the masculine, characteristic. Whereas most people don't do that, like men especially, and women. You're not a woman, so I wouldn't ask you to speak on the woman's behalf, but do you see that? I mean, I know, like, I've listened to David sometimes, and he's like, you have these big blokes in Australia, and they're putting their masks on before they walk into a restaurant, and they sit down, and then they go to the bathroom and they put their masks back on. And, why are they saying no to this? Why aren't they saying no to this? Why aren't they, standing up and saying, I'm not doing this stuff? Do you see that? Or how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, there's obviously a couple of reasons for that. There's no doubt, there's been a feminization of the masculine that's taken place over generations. If people want a really good video to watch, they should YouTube Yuri Bezmenov's testimony with G. Edward Griffin. Essentially, Yuri Bezmenov was an ex-KGB agent. This was recorded in the 80s, and he talks about the 4 stages of ideological subversion. So over generations, we have been educated and indoctrinated to become irrational, to be feminized, to basically be subverted into this socialist ideology where, there is no truth, and this is what's at the root of it. At the root of socialism, which to me is the expression of this feminization of the men, is collectivism. And basically collectivism is the idea that the group's ideals are more important than the individual's ideals. And what matters for the group should take precedence over the individual. But at the end of the day, there is no collective consciousness. There is no group ideal. All groups ultimately are made up of individuals. And so whenever you hear the words like the common good or the greater good or et cetera, basically it means that there's individuals being sacrificed. And so the power of groupthink and collectivist thinking is incredibly strong. So, I mean, when you see people putting masks on when clearly there's no evidence of a threat, and they just relinquished the use of their mind in that process, it's just the power of groupthink at work. What's someone going to think of me if I don't put this mask on, and that projection is incredibly strong. But back to your question about the feminization of men, I mean, it's been happening for an incredibly long time because essentially they've sold weakness as a virtue. If you're weak, if you're needy, that's now a virtue. That's an ideal. That's how you're going to get sympathy. That's how you're going to get handouts from the government, et cetera. And this is another symptom of collectivism, because collectivism says that everything is fair. Everyone should get everything equally, essentially, which is not really what it does by any means whatsoever. But in doing that, it means that it means that productivity, it means that ability, it means the masculine traits of drive, of will, of success, they're no longer virtues, they become diminished. That's right. They become diminished because
I was just looking at your post that you said where weakness is a virtue, and I clicked on it and it made a noise. But yes, I was looking at that from Instagram today.
Yeah, no, I posted something on that this morning. That's right. But this is the opposite to capitalism, right? In capitalism, it says each man according to his ability.
Yeah.
It says that I have the right to use my own skill, my own productive capabilities to earn what's mine. In socialism, it says, no, it doesn't matter who produces what to what level. Everyone should get the same return regardless, which is completely anti-natural. Nothing in nature works that way whatsoever. But it's absolutely perfect for, obviously this woke culture where no one wants to really do anything and everyone thinks that they should be earning everything without proving anything, so to speak. It's an incredibly in-depth subject, but hopefully that covers it on some level.
Absolutely, because that is what's being sold, and it's impossible. I have a very strong feeling about CRT because of my own personal experiences, and I've gone to school board meetings to speak out about that because it's literally it would decimate a child's ability to ever, we all face obstacles, and there's racism and there's other factors in the world, and I think we'll all come up against it, but that's the kind of stuff that I think actually builds your character, makes you stronger, gives you that extra push. Like, oh, you think I can't do it? Now I'm really going to do it. Watch me. You know what I mean? And that should incentivize us and drive us, not crushing, a child's spirit from day one, saying, oh, well, you were born of this race or you were born of this class, so it's over for you. And see, these people, they hate you. And they, or even children that are white saying, well, you were born, you're a horrible person. You hate everybody. You're inherently racist. Like that's just that is a cause off a cliff. It just takes you straight off a cliff. That's where that goes. And so, it's just, I've actually had some Instagram conversations with people about this, and they've actually softened their stance. I've had people say, well, don't you want to see the people who've always been in charge sit down for a minute so you could step up? And I'm like, I don't need them to do that. That would just be doing to them what you're claiming they're trying to do to me. So how does that make it right? It doesn't neutralize the situation. It's just none of it makes sense. It's like chasing one's tail,
Exactly. Again, it's an abandonment of reason, of rationality, which is the worst thing that we can do, for sure.
And it's a shame because I do think a lot of these younger kids, their hearts are in the right place. They're literally exploiting that good heart, that good nature of wanting to, hey, I don't want that. I don't want racism. I don't want people to be discriminated against. They're harnessing that feeling and turning it into something that's completely it can decimate the psyche.
How sinister is that? How sinister is that to take something, to take a quality virtue and to flip it and to use it for an evil agenda? There's nothing that could be more sinister than prying upon those natural, good human emotions and feelings. But this is what I mean. Like, have we come to the point where we understand that we can't rely on the system, we can't trust the system, that we can't be dependent on the system to teach our kids or to provide us with anything? We put our hands up and we say we want freedom, but are we really ready to take the responsibility that comes with freedom? For most people, the answer is no. I'm sorry to say, I don't think that we're there yet. But it's an individual process, and each individual that really claims they understand what freedom means, which includes the freedom for other people to do evil. You want freedom? They have the right to do what they want to do. It doesn't mean you have to accept it, but that's what freedom is. They're free to choose at the end of the day. But do I have to be part of that? Do I have to be entangled in that? No, because I'm a capable human being who's capable of taking responsibility. And this is how we begin to empower ourselves. It might seem like a monumental task at first, but as we begin to take control of the little things in our lives and take responsibility, we can begin to build that muscle. And again, this is another exercise in self-esteem. This is how we build self-esteem, by realizing that we're competent, that we're capable. The definition of self-esteem is to feel competent to deal with the basic challenges of life. And until we can even develop that capacity, we're not really gonna get an idea of what true freedom actually feels like. So are we at the point where we can just say no to the system completely and curate our lives without it? or not? I think that's the question that people need to ask themselves.
Well, I feel like what's funny is what we were to build upon that exploitation of that human drive to want to eradicate injustice. We just simply don't know ourselves. We don't know ourselves anymore. And unfortunately, the people with nefarious intentions have devoted their lives to understanding us better than we understand ourselves. And they've completely exploited that. So when that's been your whole underlying foundation of your work. It's like your self-esteem, know yourself, be true to yourself. If you don't have the user manual for how to human, and they do, they're like, oh, okay, so if we do this, they'll act like this. If we do this, they'll act like that. And subconsciously, that's where that trigger is happening and those reactions are happening. But consciously, we don't see it because we don't know ourselves. We don't even know ourselves. And this is the true tragedy, I feel, of this whole situation. It's like we're kind of in a position right now where if we really look at it, and this is my opinion, but we just have to learn how to human again. Because I think our behavior and our thought processes since 2020 have clearly shown that we're functioning on a very root chakra, survival, primitive, subhuman level. We're just like, so I must survive. Okay. I must keep my job. Okay. I'll take the jab. Okay. It's just a very primal. It is not at all where we were created to be.
I 100% agree. We're still very much in that tribal mind, in that tribalism mentality, which again is echoed by what I think is the roots of this evil agenda, which is collectivism, which I kind of explained a bit previously. And the other thing that you mentioned there is, most people can't see the darkness in the world and they're not willing to do anything about it because they're unwilling to see the darkness in themselves. They're unwilling to see that, hey, I'm actually capable of these atrocities. I contain multitudes. I'm capable of lying to someone, of deceiving someone. I have wicked dreams or wicked thoughts at times, but no one really wants that reflection. Everyone just wants to point at it, and so everything stays at bay, so to speak, and everything's allowed because we don't want ourselves being exposed. So we let everything else slide outside of us because we fear being seen ourselves. But it's only the person that's done the necessary work to be like, hey, I know what I'm capable of. I know I have a dark side. I know I have a shadow side. I know I haven't always been perfect. I know I haven't always walked in truth, but I'm aware of that part of me. And now I can choose differently. I've got more capacity to choose because I'm willing to see more of myself.
That is preached. That's yes, absolutely. Yes. I never even took it that far. So thank you. So speaking of doing the work, can we talk about your course, Rise Above the Herd? Because I feel like that could be something very instrumental in getting to that point where you can start to do the work.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's exactly why we created it was, for truth seekers who truly want to build and curate lives of integrity. Our system is understand, deprogram, activate. So we provide you with the knowledge and the foundation of what sets the conditions and what sets these programs running, which keep you in this mode of mediocrity, which keep you in this mode of self-sacrifice. And then basically we activate the self-esteem within you and we teach you how to actually use your mind rationally, how to think clearly, how to really get in touch with what you actually value, where you want to go and how to build your life accordingly. Because most people, they're operating under this modality of self-sacrifice. And really, it's altruism, as Ayn Rand would have called it. It's this idea that anything that we do for another person makes us a good person. Anything we do for ourselves makes us a bad person and selfish. And this is what keeps people stuck. This is what keeps people trapped. At the end of the day, we're not willing to see the virtues within ourselves. But we've come to a crossroads. We've come to a point in time where ultimately we have to build our world in our image through cleaning ourselves and then through creating a life of integrity based on how we truly feel about ourselves. But we first have to be willing to, like you said, know ourselves and see ourselves. So in that program, we deprogram from collectivism, from altruism, from new age ideologies. And then we really teach you what true individualism is, what true freedom is, what it means to be selfish as a virtue in the virtuous sense, because you actually love yourself, because you like yourself. So of course you realize that you have this one life as a unique being with this unique potential that no one else can do except for you. And you can actually live out that dream should you choose to walk a path of the highest integrity. You know, the thing is, like, this is the greatest conspiracy of all, and we've forgotten that. What are we doing right here having this conversation in human bodies, with these voices, with these hands? What the hell is all this? We've forgotten the mystery on that level, you know? But we all came here with unique potential and a unique purpose, and we all know that within ourselves. We all feel within ourselves there's something else that we'd rather be doing, that we should be doing. And I'm here to tell you that's absolutely possible, but it takes work, and that's what Rise Above the Herd is. We're trying to hand the power back to the truthers, back to the truth seekers, back to the people of sincerity, of integrity, because, you know, that's what I've been called.
Yeah. Now, how do you balance? I think part of making that transformation and transcending is a fear of loss. And I know you gain a lot, but you also, like, for instance, you told me you got married, you have children, and then you kind of had this really profound epiphany, you know, and decided to go your own road. Now, I think it's awesome that you were able to grow with your wife and your, you know, I don't know about your relationship, but you know what I mean, that it worked anyway. A lot of people, because their choices have been predicated on it being, well, I guess I should do this. I should get married now. I should have a kid. I should, you know, it wasn't really, I'm not saying everyone, but there's a lot, at least I know a lot of people who kind of went through the motions of life, but didn't very consciously choose the big, you know, milestones of their life. So how does that balance out? Because I think that sometimes is a point of fear for people to cross that threshold into true authenticity, because sometimes when you embrace that, you lose a lot. Maybe you find like, oh, this person I'm with isn't really the person I should be with, and they don't like this authentic. And you talked a little bit about that in the beginning, but is that something you talk about in this program? You know, I don't know. Sorry, that question is kind of garbled, but I do think that's an unconscious fear of people. They may not have it right on their brain, but they're like, oh, well, that may mean a whole shift of friends. That may mean a whole shift of relationships and intimate relationships if I choose to embrace this authenticity.
Of course. I mean, it's an incredibly valid question. And this is the work that it takes. Are you happy, like we said, to be content, to just go along, to get along? Are you happy to be a subdued and limited version of yourself because you're afraid of what you could be, because you're afraid that people might not like the authentic version of you, because you're afraid to actually live out your values? Or are you here ready to say, I'm an individual with this life, and I want to live according to the truth. I want to walk the highest path. I want to live authentically and in integrity. And obviously, if it's the truth, if it's real integrity, if it's real authenticity, it can't be bad for me. It can't be wrong for me. So I'm going to walk this process. And, you know, those obviously who stay with me and come along with me and who understand my journey, they reciprocate those values, and they're meant to be with me. But if someone wants me to be inauthentic, if someone wants me to be limited, then, I mean, is that really something that I want for myself? Or am I happy just to accept that, yeah, I'm going to maintain some level of inauthenticity just to keep the illusion going on within my life that I'm really happy with who I'm with what I'm doing, with where I'm going, etc. And it's something that we're all confronted with. We're all faced with it. And it is the primary fear which keeps people from walking a path of true authenticity. 100%, there's no doubt about it. But we can't avoid, like I said, the shadow. We can't avoid the difficult aspects of this work whatsoever. And many people, they do want, you know, a rainbow-covered trail to this path with unicorns and fairies and all the rest of it. But it's non-existent. We have to do the work. You know, on some level, detoxing is a painful process, and it's as within, so without. It works on all levels that way.
Yeah. And I think the more you walk down that path, you kind of weave a very tangled web. So, you know, sometimes we think, well, if I don't do this, everything will stay the same. But yeah, it's like, if you don't do it, you'll just get deeper and deeper into it, and just be harder and harder to get to that point.
That's right, because the deeper you go, there's inauthenticity for miles. You can go as long as you want, but you're just going to diminish your own sense of self, and you're going to lose yourself in that process. Your mirror is going to be the inauthentic society and relationships around you, whereas your true mirror should be who you really are, your relationship first and foremost with yourself, and that should be the guidance, the guiding force of your actions and decisions in your life. So yeah, and I mean, this is the crux of it all, is, know thyself. Who are you? Do you actually know who you are? Do you actually know what you want? Do you actually know what you value? How many people are actually asking themselves these questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an underbelly to everything, and everything that gives you great rewards, also you got to suffer a little to get to that.
Yeah, that's not true suffering. Like it's what's being suffered is the loss of illusion. It's not anything real that's being lost. It's simply the illusion that you've become attached to. And yeah, it hurts to be separated from that because you've identified with what's false. But it's up to the individual. What do you actually want?
It's funny because when I've had certain points where I've really hit the pedal to the metal on trying to transform or transcend certain things, I find myself crying, like I go to bed or something, I just start tearing up and crying. And I used to associate that with pain and suffering. And so it would kind of deter me from pushing further. And then I thought, you know what, with everything, it's like a death. It's almost like you're mourning, but it's a beautiful thing, because I feel that you should do that. You should mourn, not necessarily in the form of crying. That just happened to be my form, because I didn't understand why. Like, why am I crying? I'm supposed to be doing something positive. But it's like, you do, in my opinion, I do feel that you should mourn that old self. It served you for as many years as you needed it to, and it was there for you, maybe in a dysfunctional sense, but it was there, and you loved it, and you embraced it, and it was a huge part of your life and your existence, and maybe your survival for some.
Yeah.
So it's important to mourn that. And I'm not saying you're not saying that, but I'm just like, that came out for me. And so when that would happen again, I would say, oh, well, this is actually kind of a beautiful thing. It's part of the process. It's the death and the rebirth, and the death and the rebirth. And, it also depends on how you look at it. When you do feel that pain, can you contextualize it in a sense where it's like, okay, well, this is all part of the journey,
Can you actually be willing to feel it? Like we said, are you willing to be human? And God forbid there's negative emotions. What's wrong with negative emotions? It's part of this human experience, but we're so detached from actually feeling the different nuances and complexity of who we are, which is why we're trapped. We're trying to live in a one-seasoned world. We're trying to live in a one-seasoned reality where nothing is that way whatsoever. So all of it has to be felt so deeply, 100%, Like, what's coming up for you is not by accident, by any means whatsoever. But that's what it means to be human. Can you actually hold space for those intense and difficult and challenging feelings and emotions without having to run away from them, without having to self-soothe them, without having to, scroll for 2 hours, or, drink a bottle of wine, or smoke a couple of joints, whatever it might be? Can you just be with those feelings and just sit with them? Because that's the work at the end of the day. It happens on a somatic level. And this goes back from childhood. There's so much we've been conditioned to bypass and not feel and not deal with and not look at, because of our parents and our grandparents were afraid to deal with them and afraid to look at them. But if we want to reclaim that, it's up to us ultimately to uncover everything that's under the rug.
Yeah, because I see a very disturbing social trend in the mainstream, and it's misallocating that pain or whatever, that manifestation of that, or those feelings, as a victim, and then getting a lot of attention for that. Like, in other words, every time I cry, I get attention, so I'll just cry. Like, I'll actually develop a crutch for those kinds of feelings that come up to soothe, not even self-soothe, but to get attention from other folks. And I think, you see that on TV shows and, just in the popular culture. it's like the more of a victim you are, the more attention you get. But there's never an emphasis on getting out of that state. Just, oh, tell us about it. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, you must, so I think a lot of people are unfortunately mischanneling that as it comes up.
For sure. I mean, feeling difficult emotions doesn't have to make you a victim on any level whatsoever. But it's a personal process. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I see the people film themselves crying on social media. It's like, how can you actually be having an authentic experience if you know there's a camera filming you and you're going to post this later, But to me, there's no victimization in feeling the things that your body needs to feel, because we've bypassed so much trauma that's happened to us in our lives. And, part of the conditioning is, you're weak and you're a victim for actually feeling that. But the truth of the matter is that complexity, it needs to come to the surface. It needs to be felt so we can create more space for who we actually are. Because right now we're curating our lives, trying to avoid that.
Yeah, that's so true. Are there any issues? Like, I know we're talking about kind of like the underlying real challenges that we're facing, but just as far as any world issues right now in particular that are really weighing on you or troubling you, or you see as something as major obstacles moving into this next phase of, transcending and seeking truth?
Yeah, not really, to be honest with you. And, I don't think that this is the way you're intending to use the word, but for me, transcending inclinates bypassing, because nothing can actually be bypassed, and we're not actually going anywhere. There's nothing that we can escape from. We're here to face all of it. But for me, I don't really pay that much attention to what's going on in the world, to be honest with you, because I have the power, because I'm responsible for my reality. And so I think people, again, like you said, can get caught up in these doom and gloom narratives of having to point out constantly the next thing that's coming, the next, World Economic Forum, the next conspiracy, the next thing Klaus Schwab said, the next thing Bill Gates said. But at the end of the day, is that just a way for you to bypass responsibility? Is that just a new identification that you formed for yourself? What interests me, what lights me up, is creating value in the world, is expressing more of myself, is of meeting new people, new cool people such as yourself, being able to connect, being able to share knowledge. That's my focus every single day. It's not really on pointing out everything that's wrong in the world. It's how much more of my authentic expression can I tap into, and can I give, and can I share that creative potential? So, yeah.
Okay, so for someone who's watching this and they're like, wow, I'm really inspired. Obviously enrollment has passed for this cycle of Rise Above the Herd. Like, what would you recommend being like the first step to taking that, to getting in the direction of being more authentic and finding your own truth?
Yeah, well, actually, we just announced new dates yesterday. So, yeah,
awesome.
so people
I didn't see that come through. Oops.
No, it hasn't been shared publicly yet, but we're doing our third run. We're doing our third run in September, and applications are open now. If people want to head to riseabovetheherd.com.au, they can apply and check it out. Honestly, our podcast, Here for the Truth, is an absolutely incredible resource. We have 78 episodes with some of the greatest minds on these topics. A few episodes I highly recommend for sure are Irene Lyon, episode 69 on the nervous system. I think the nervous system is a topic which many people haven't really come into proper contact with, and it's something that's really important to understand. Our episodes on shadow work with Xavier Dagba. It's just a great resource, honestly. They're happy to. They're more than welcome to reach out to me, and I can offer some guidance on Instagram or wherever, for sure.
Okay, I'm writing this down. Like, I have to watch episode 69. Okay. So I know you said Eckhart Tolle, and I read that. I read that book a long time ago, and it's funny because I think maybe a year ago I bought it again and I read it again. So it's funny that you say that. I think it serves its purpose. You can't take it in the absolute fashion, but it does help when you're a person like myself who gets you just immerse yourself and you get too deep into it. You got to take a step back. But who are the people that you I wouldn't say look up to, but who has
Yeah.
inspired you along the way?
Yeah, there's definitely people I look up to, and there's definitely people that have inspired me in a profound way. To give you a short list of names, Michael Tsarian, one of the greatest thinkers and researchers still alive today on the topics of psychology, philosophy, esotericism, conspiracy. He has his own podcast called Unslaved. To me, he is first and foremost the person that's inspired me the most, and he's someone that's changed my life. We just had the honor of interviewing him on our latest episode, which drops Sunday. Ayn Rand is one name which I think everyone needs to dive into. Atlas Shrugged is a book that really changed my life and really gave me a deep sense of value and self-esteem, and really woke me up to what collectivism actually is, and woke me up to the fact that my life is my own, and if I value my life, then I'm going to do things to enhance the quality of my life, and there's no guilt involved in that. Nathaniel Branden, who's the father of self-esteem, he's another great one. There's so many, but I think those three, they're probably the foundation.
And how are things in Australia right now?
Yeah, right now I'm in a little town called Wollongong, which is about an hour south of Sydney. I left Sydney at the start of 2020 when things first started with the scam. It was very intense for a long period of time, but right now things have completely eased. There's no restrictions, there's no mandates, there's nothing going on, no forced mask wearing. Whether it's waiting in the wings to come around again, I don't know. At the peak of it, I was given a $1,000 fine simply for sitting at the park during a curfew and eating a cucumber. So it got very tyrannical for a long period of time there. But right now things are okay.
Did you pay the fine?
No.
Yeah. I had to know. Sorry. Well,
I went to a protest as well. I got fined for not wearing a mask in the shopping centre, and no, I have not paid any of them.
Well, I mean, I saw a video of a pregnant woman getting arrested for posting a protest on Facebook. I mean,
Yep, I saw that too.
I mean, I think I saw a woman saying, "Don't look at a sunset." I saw a press conference with a woman. She was Australian, and I don't know her name. I wish I knew, but I mean, people don't believe me when I say this. I'm like, I saw it with my own eyes. Like, this is not just speculation here. She said, "Don't look at your neighbors. Don't look at a sunset."
Yeah.
That was just like, wow, talk about emotional or psychological abuse. I don't know if there's anything that's worse than that. I mean, that's just
it's so ridiculous. And this is what I mean. Like, fuck them. Like, just live your own life. There's no point. You realize now what's under the cover of all of this. Like, to me, there's no trying to solve or reform the system. Just start building your own life with people of integrity.
100%. Are you homeschooling?
Yeah, they'll definitely be homeschooled in some capacity. My children's minds will never be molded by any government institution. No way.
Okay, and I don't want to take up too much time. My final question is, do you think humanity will win this? Because I do feel, I know you can't let it get to you, but I do feel you can see it mounting now. Like, something's got to give. The tension just keeps rising. You see what's happening in the Netherlands with the farmers and, all these upheavals. And like, I think Ghana, they said now there's huge protests because people can't simply afford to live. I mean, we're just getting pushed to the brink where we can't no longer stick our heads in the sand. It's, they're just going to keep pushing. What is your outlook on all of this?
There's never been more distrust of Big Pharma. There's never been more distrust of Hollywood. There's never been more distrust of mainstream media. There's never been more distrust of government institutions. To me, the good is absolutely winning. It might not look like it if you just look at it from, a narrow point of view. But to me, this is the ultimate time to be alive. Where we 100% are in a process where lies are being exposed on a monumental level, where authenticity is being rewarded and inauthenticity is being shunned. So to me, there's no doubt about it, but it's up to the individuals to do the work. And that's ultimately what my message is.
I think we also need to come together, though, too. We need to drop all the labels. We need to get over this, like, oh, I can't talk to them because they're, a liberal, or, they're a conservative or whatever. I mean, we need to just get all that out.
Yeah, but we need to come together on the foundation of freedom. We can't force anyone to do anything. We have to come together because we genuinely want to, because it's actually in two people's rational self-interest to be like, hey, I want to help you. Hey, I want to help you. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, not out of resentment, not out of feeling, oh, I just have to feel good because of, some projection from society. When individuals who have truly filled their own cup, who truly love themselves, and they truly know what they want to do, they come together, not out of self-sacrifice, out of true choice and freedom. There's nothing more powerful than that. All we have to get out of is this muck of guilt and resentment and obligation, because that's not serving anyone.
There's that diamond that you turn from coal again. Thank you. You have a talent for that, I'm telling you. Okay, well, I could talk to you forever. I want to respect your time. Is there anything else that you want to share?
I think we've covered a lot. I think this was awesome. I really appreciate you having me. The podcast is here for the truth.com. The course is riseabovetheherd.com.au. And the highest path is possible. You have an inner dream for a reason. You have so much potential. And it might not seem like it now, but, baby steps, a bit by bit. And I guarantee you that you can live and create a life of deep authenticity and deep connectedness, where there's no difference in the feeling between who you are and what you do. And to me, that's the ultimate path. That's what we're all here for. And I just want to say that it's possible. I know it is because I've experienced it myself. And
you're truly a testament to that. One other, just actually, it's a logistical question. Since you're in Australia, what do the time zones look like for that, for people listening, maybe in the States or wherever, to join the program?
Yeah, so our program is international. We've got clients from Australia, from America, from Europe, from Asia. So the program is pre-recorded modules as well as the live call component. The live calls are generally held. It's 10 a.m. for Australia, which I think is 3 p.m. PST or 4 p.m. PST. It's really not an issue for the US. My co-host is in the US, so it's built around having to cater to a US audience as well.
Yeah, he's in California, right?
He's in Topanga Canyon. Yeah.
Oh, I love that area. Okay, well, I'm definitely going to check out the program. I'm going to take a peek. I did take a peek before, so thank you so much, Joel. I think you're amazing. I'll continue to follow you. Thanks for dropping those gems on a daily basis. Thank goodness you're not being shadow banned with me. You always come up in my feed, so I'll continue sharing some of those wisdoms as well in my stories, because I love doing that. But I want to thank you for sharing everything that you do, and just your words they're just great. So that's all I can say. Thank you for taking the time and coming on and sharing your wisdom with everyone.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate everything that you're doing as well.
Thank you.